taking names and kicking butts. This is Headkicks and Haymakers.
Whoa, man, that was a weird intro, folks. Welcome back. Good morning, fight fans. I am that dude, Bodkins, back from the COVID. That's right, just like Nate the Train said last week, Mama ain't raised no. I'm joined this morning, as always, with Kay with the Craig, my main man, Craig, and Mr. Smoking Amigo, Kenneth Miller. Morning, boys. I'm back. I'm about 90% healthy. I'm ready for this fight on UFC 278. I almost said 279. I'm getting ahead of myself. But 278, Usman versus Edwards. But before we get into it, boys, big news over the fight week this week. Shane Burgos leaves UFC, signs with the PFL. Dana has come out and said they pretty much screwed the pooch on that one. Didn't even, I mean, according to Shane Burgos, who never even talked to Dana, but in negotiations with UFC, Hunter Campbell and the boys. But Dana said they screwed the pooch. They shouldn't have never let a guy like Shane Burgos go. But, Craig, how you feeling? Shane Burgos leaving to the PFL. Is this something that, Shane Burgos was never probably going to be a featherweight champion, but still in his prime, still a guy that puts on exciting fights. Is this something that we'll see in the future of maybe a guy that realizes, they're young, go out and make this money here?
I think there's a possibility that we might see some more of it. It's very surprising. We see guys leave UFC and go to, the PFL or even Bellator and things like that. But it's usually guys that are kind of like over the hump and kind of on the downswing. So the Shane Burgos thing, I mean, it was surprising to see, a young and up and comer kind of leave the UFC. And then the fact, like you said, that Dana came out and said that they screwed that one up. I think Dana's literal words were, "We fucked that up." So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know when Dana's coming out and saying that. I do think that, we might see some mid-tier guys, I guess, if that's what you want to call them, some guys that might not be able to, get to that top tier in the UFC, maybe take on some of these other journeys where they might have a little bit more success. And this kind of comes, on the backswing of all this fighter pay talk, and Burgos just saying that, he got better offer there at PFL. So we'll kind of see how that, comes out into the conversations as we move forward. But I still think at the end of the day, if you're a professional fighter, man, UFC is the cream of the crop, and that's ultimately that's where you want to be.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to really capitalize on the most money you can possibly make, it's going to have to be in the UFC. That's where your most notoriety is going to get. It's where your biggest following is going to get. But you are going to see these guys, kind of like Bodkin said. But Burgos isn't not going to win a title. I think he's kind of shown that. He's a good fighter, though. I think that shows in by Dana saying that they did make a mistake by letting him go. But you are going to see more guys in that level go. And you are going to see PFL start overpaying for some of those guys in that level, too, just to be able to say, hey, we pride these guys away from UFC in their prime. Maybe it's not the UFC cream of the crop, but they are going to steal some UFC talent in their prime, and that's going to be kind of a big talking point for them as far as negotiations go with other fighters. It's going to say, hey, Shane Burgos left in his prime to come over here. You need to do it too. This is what we can do for your career. And Shane Burgos got a chance to go over there and win himself a lot of money. We kind of said he's not going to win a title here, but he can go over there and win that tournament, make himself an extra $1 million.
Yeah, Shane has said that the PFL came correct even before, his last contract, and they're the only team he negotiated outside of the UFC, but said this money is going to set him up financially. That's not even if he wins, these $1 million tournaments. He signed up for 2 seasons. He can go back to the UFC. I think obviously if Dana wants him to come back, he goes. Let's just say he wins these 2 tournaments, 2 seasons at either featherweight or lightweight. He said he's going to either fight at either one. He hasn't quite decided yet. But he's 30 years old. He can come back at 33 and still be ready for the UFC and finish his career out there and make a little bit of money that way too. Is that a possible? You think Craig, that he could do that?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen guys, if he can go to PFL and win these tournaments, I mean, then that's just more marketability coming back into the UFC. I think. I mean, we've seen guys, like Michael Chandler that tore it up outside of the UFC, comes into the UFC with a big name and a big reputation. If Shane Burgos goes to the PFL and cleans house, then I mean, you got to think like you want to see him against the UFC guys again. And kind of like Kenny said, alluded to a little bit. I mean, he's got the opportunity here to go make some pretty good money. And a lot of times in sports, we see blueprints set, so if Burgos can do this, he can go make some money at the PFL and then eventually, have success there and make it back to the UFC and get some money there at the back end of the career. I mean, that is a blueprint that some other guys, I mean, may follow. I don't think it's something that we're going to see a ton of guys. I don't think it's something we're going to see, some of the elite fighters in the UFC leaving. But it is something, like I said, like these mid-tier guys, I think it's something that we might see.
Kenny, I mean, Dana said that they screwed up here. I mean, will this force this like PFL, especially PFL, because it seems like they're the ones getting some of these guys. Now they were going for the veterans, like the name guys that maybe, I wouldn't say like has-beens, but guys that just like that passed their prime, Anthony Pettis, Rory McDonald, and Jeremy Stevens, couple of those guys. Those signings have not worked, but somebody like Shane Burgos, who's still in his prime, will this now force Dana to maybe pay those mid-tier guys a little bit more money? Or, I mean, is it just the UFC and are they just going to keep churning them out?
I think that one thing we can all kind of confidently say about Dana ain't going to change a single thing that he does. I think that Dana's just going to sit there and hope that Burgess goes over there and fails so that he can say, see, it didn't really matter. At the end, I think he's going to have to pay somebody more, but Dana's not going to start changing a lot of stuff he does. At the end of the day, the UFC's made it without John Jones. They're damn sure going to make it without Shane Burgess. And I think that Dana's going to just keep operating under that model that as long as UFC's on the show, that it's going to sell, and he's not going to overpay for those guys. I mean, I don't agree with 100% of what Dana says with the eat what you kill thing. If fighters were allowed to eat what they kill, you're allowed to make jewelry out of husks and stuff, and they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to go get sponsors. They're not allowed to put nobody on the flag. They're not allowed to put nobody on the shorts. Yeah, they can go sell their own shirts, but he's not letting them eat what they kill. He's not letting them go make the most money they can with their name. And that's my only issue with that. If he's not going to raise the pay, let them go make their money. But I don't think you're going to see a big giant jump in that mid-tier level fighter pay. Because at the end of the day, it was pretty clear. If it's clear to us that Burgess wasn't going to win a title, then it's clear to Dana and Sean Shelby too. And at the end of the day, he's not going to overpay for somebody that's not going to win a title.
Yeah, I get that too, but I mean, I'll take Shane Burgos fighting on this card than some of these other fighters as we're getting ready to break it down. Because I mean, Shane Burgos is still a name and a guy who's put on exciting fights. Now we're going to get into some fights.
Exciting fights is because of the people he's fighting, though, and that's not an offense to him. His stand-up is good, but some of his best fights is because the other dude who's fighting is really good too. And that's like, it does go hand in hand. It does take two to tango. And you're right. I would take Shane Burgess on this card, but if I'm Dana, I'm not going to overpay Shane Burgess by $1 million a fight just to get him on this card either.
No, you're right. I mean, you're not going to overpay. Dana's not going to overpay nobody. I mean, that's the reason that, he's, they're a $1 billion industry and they've kind of won this, like, this race here, and they're the biggest, corporation in mixed martial arts, but to me, that shows that one thing I want to point out is Dana's not in these contract negotiations anymore. Obviously, is that something, Craig, that you think Dana will now step back in? Because he seems to be, I think, and it's been being reported too by like Ariel Helwani and others, that he's really, he's still the head figure, but he's not making the decisions as much anymore, and he's more stepped out. I mean, Craig, something like, Shane Burgos leaving, is this going to make Dana step back into those negotiations, or is it just still going to be Hunter Campbell and the boys?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it might Dana White might have a conversation about some things with these boys, but I feel like there's a reason that he's not involved at the moment already. So, I mean, I think that he's going to leave it, kind of the way that it's going. I mean, listen, there's been some cards to complain about here. This card is not great. The next pay-per-view card's not great. We've also hyped up some of these fight nights in between, and we've got some loaded cards coming up, down the stretch of the year. So, I think the contracts, the matchmakers, a lot of that stuff going on in UFC, I think Dana White's going to continue to kind of let it go the way that it's been going. I think if we get to a point where we start seeing a lot of this happening, maybe Dana White steps in. But Dana White acknowledged that the UFC messed up letting Burgos go at this point in his career. I think there's some conversations to be had there that Dana White will have, and then business as usual continues on.
I think a lot of it depends on what the gap was on the number. Shane said that PFL, Botkins even pointed out, PFL came correct before his last contract even. Now, what does correct mean to him, and what does correct mean to Dana White, and what does correct mean to PFL? I think that there's probably 3 different numbers there. And I think that as long as you Dana looks at these negotiations, John Jones wants $20 million a fight, never going to happen. I don't think Dana needs to be involved in those negotiations. Don't think he cares to be involved in those negotiations. You lose Shane Burgess over $350,000, Dana's probably going to step in and say, hey, that's not going to happen again. I don't think he's going to step in as far as getting in the day-to-day negotiations of it. I don't think he needs that. Kind of like you guys said, he stepped away for a reason. He's not involved right now for a reason. But I do think he's going to come in and say, hey, we're not losing another guy in his prime over chump change.
All right, boys, let's go ahead and get into this UFC 278. Craig kind of alluded to it. The top is pretty good, but the bottom is minimum here. Craig's got the championship belt, the reigning defending pick'em champ, 2-time champ here. As Kenny's won, you've won twice, Kenny, I think, and I've still yet to taste victory, but I'm going to change that today, baby. It's happening today at 278. It's going to be my time. Let's go ahead and break it down. Like I just said, the bottom of the card desires to be a lot. To be a lot. But let's get into it. The first fight here, light heavyweight, Tyson Pedro, the biggest favorite on the card, minus 800 versus Henry Hunsaker. Hunsaker's making his lightweight debut. He was fighting at heavyweight. Tyson is 8-3. He does have win over Paul Craig and Khalil Roundtree, but he's 3-5 in his last 8 fights. Or he's lost his last 3 of his last five. Sorry. And then you have Henry Hunsaker. No wins in the UFC, dropping down to light heavyweight here. This fight already sounds like it's going to be a doozy here, folks, to open up the pay-per-view. Craig as our pick'em champ. How do you like this fight here?
So, kind of like you alluded to on paper, this fight, to kick off a pay-per-view card isn't very good. But how many of these pay-per-view cards have we seen a fight that looks like it's going to be a good one to kick it off when we've gotten, some duds or some things happen? And we were on the roll there for a little while of these pay-per-view cards. It's like just starting off crappy. I'm not going to put money down saying that this one's going to change that. Pick wise, I gotta go with Pedro on this one. A guy that hasn't won in the UFC and is now dropping down weight to try to make. To me, when guys are doing that, you're dropping down weight, you're trying to make something happen. You're grabbing at straws. It almost feels like, And I know Hunsaker came out and said, he was kind of making a laugh about it, saying, "Oh, they're pinning the 2 Australian guys against each other," and when the odds are that heavy one direction, there's a reason, you know what I mean? And I just feel like the guy that hasn't won in the UFC that was sitting at heavyweight, dropping down to lightweight, I feel like you're grabbing at straws. I gotta take Pedro in this fight.
Can you go ahead, my man? You're muted. There you go.
I can see the little thing when it pops up on the top and it says, "Hey, you're muted, dummy. Act like you're a professional," is what it said. No, I think it's pretty easy to pick Pedro in this fight. Like you said, he's got a couple big wins. We hyped up Paul Craig on here a few weeks back like he was about to make some big run. So obviously a win over Paul Craig, especially when he got that win, kind of means a little something compared to a guy, like you said, he ain't won in the UFC. He's dropping down to light heavyweight. It's not at plus 550 was what I saw it at yesterday, man. You might sprinkle a little on Hunsaker if you're trying to make a little money on this fight. But if you're trying to get that belt back, you're going to pick Tyson Pedro.
Yeah, boys. His name's Tyson Pedro, and I learned a long time ago, if your name's Tyson, whether it's Mike Tyson, Tyson Fury, or Tyson Pedro, you pick a Tyson to win, boys. We're all in on Tyson Pedro. Lock it in. All right, we get to the next fight. It's the women's bantamweight fight. And me and Craig, before the pre-show, we were talking about how we don't even understand why this fight's even on the card, on the pay-per-view. I mean, you have Wu. Can you help me pronounce that last name? Is it Exxon? Wu-Tang Clan?
I don't know why you would pick me. I don't know why you think that I'm the Chinese linguist over here, but I believe that the X is the sh sounds. Shannon, perhaps.
Wu-Tang, Wu-Shan.
That's what I called her, was Wu-Tang. That's what I wrote down in my notes, was Wu-Tang.
Well, we're going to stick with Wu-Tang. So she is taking on Lucy Pudilova. Wu-Tang here is 12-5. She's lost her last 3. She is the dog at plus 100, while Lucy Pudilova minus 120. I thought she was making her UFC debut. I had to scroll down her fight scene and seen that her last 5 fights were not the UFC. At one time, she was in the UFC and hadn't had a win in the UFC. I mean, I don't even know where to start with this fight or who to really pick here. Kenny, break down this fight for us, and why is it even on this pay-per-view?
Why it's on the pay-per-view, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like there's – I don't want to bring any disrespect on the fight. I do think that hopefully both of these fighters know that's probably what people are saying about it, and they want to go put on a good show. But to say why it's on the pay-per-view, I don't know. You almost feel like Dana kind of stuck it to Usman a little bit, and I don't really know kind of what happened there. But I'm going to go with Wu, man. At the end of the day, like you said, you got to scroll a little bit to find Pudilova's last UFC fights, and, you got let go for a reason. Maybe she got a little bit of new life, and she wants to come back and prove that she's going to be able to make a name here and stay. But I picked Wu. I don't really know much about how to break it down. I think Wu's just the experience of being in the UFC. You're starting to see a lot of these Chinese fighters kind of make more of a run. They're showing that they're very tough, gritty fighters. They ain't got no quit. So I picked Wu. Just because Pudilova's making that debut back, and I think that she's going to have a little extra just trying to stop that.
Craig, go ahead, my man.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said before we even went live, we were kind of discussing this, and I just on the bandwagon of what is Dana doing. I read a stat that these two fighters are combined 3-9 in the UFC. Why are we paying pay-per-view money to watch these two girls go at it? I don't understand. But here we are. So it's on a pay-per-view card, and we got to make picks. I don't know much about either one of them. Kind of like Kenny alluded to, I know Pudilova's been kind of in and out of the UFC, which, I mean, I don't want to say tells you everything you need to know, but it tells you a little bit. And then Wu is 0-3, I think, in her last 3 fights. But I have watched a little bit. To me, it just looks like she's got a little better striking, a little bit more power. If I got to throw the belt on the line and make a pick somewhere, I'm going to take Wu in this fight.
Wu-Tang.
So I will say that Pudilova, since she's been out of the UFC, she went on a nice run. She's won 5 of her last 6 fights outside of the UFC. So maybe she put it together, got that practice that she needed. Wasn't quite ready the first go around. I think she's ready now. I'm all in on Pudilova, baby. Knock it in. This is where I separate myself, giving me up Pudilova. All right, so now from 2 names that we didn't know to maybe the most respected name in all of UFC, Jose Aldo, the number 3 ranked bantamweight, obviously arguably the greatest featherweight. I would say the greatest featherweight of all time. Jose Aldo taking on Merab Devashili. I'm just going to call him Merab from here on out. But Merab's ranked number 6 and is the favorite at minus 135. Jose at the dog at 115 here. Craig, are you taking the veteran Jose Aldo to turn back the clock? I mean, he's been high. He's won his last 3 fights here.
So this is, I mean, here we are on this card, finally hitting a good fight, I feel like. In my personal opinion, I'll get to it here in a little bit when we get to the next fight, but this should be the co-main on the card. It's basically, I mean, a title eliminator of such. I mean, it's basically a top 5 fight here. And I think, I mean, everything in this fight is going to come down to Marab with the wrestling, Aldo with the takedown defense. Can he get Aldo down to the mat and take him down? Aldo's takedown defense, he's like 90%, I think, on his takedown defense, which is, incredible. And I think if Aldo can keep it on the feet with the leg kicks and the striking, it's a 3-round fight. So old man Aldo, I think, the cardio, he can keep it up. So that's the way I'm leaning, man. I think, this is it for Aldo. I think he's got all his chips in the bag. He wants one more shot at that belt, and I think a win here might get it for him. It's a big fight for him. Like I said, I think Marab's going to be going for the takedowns. Trying the wrestling, that's his bread and butter. I think if Aldo can keep the takedown defense there, keep it on the feet with the striking, I'm giving Aldo the edge.
Kenny, Aldo, he's won his last three fights. He's 3-5 as a bantam as a bantamweight here, but he's coming back. This is his last shot. Craig alluded it to. Or is the young guy Marab, who's on an 8-fight winning streak? How do you see this one breaking down?
I think I said it maybe yesterday, maybe this morning. I don't remember. I guess it was yesterday in group. I love Jose Aldo, man. I think that you can tell, like you said, he's one of the most respected fighters in the game. When Volk started talking GOAT, this was the first name that Max brought up as a featherweight GOAT. He hasn't fought featherweight in a while. So it says a lot. It just feels so much like the first time Aldo fought Jan. And you got a young up-and-comer who likes to wrestle. I think that it works out for Jose that it's going to be a 3-round fight. I think he's going to be able to keep his distance a little better. Like Craig said, hopefully that cardio keeps up. Jose's never really had very many cardio issues, but he's also not really had a lot of trouble on the scale either. And I think you've seen he was the last one to weigh in yesterday. He needed the towel. Hopefully that doesn't mean it was a bad weight cut, but if it was, how's that going to hurt his cardio? The way I see this fight going is I get caught every week. So one thing Dana does do every week well is he gives us nostalgia traps, don't he? Every card, it feels like there's a nostalgia trap. And it just reaches out for Nick and Kenny, I feel like. You guys got the balls not to pick the dudes that you love. And I do not have them in this fight. I'm going to take Jose to win by decision. That's my dog of the week.
Man, I'm on an island again here. I'm taking Marab. I went back and forth here multiple times. And then I just think at the weigh-in, Jose just looked deflated, like when he was just disappointed in himself. Then they had to bring out the curtain of shame. Did make the weight, but I went back and forth. Aldo, his biggest win as a bantamweight's pretty much been against Cheeto. Marab's on the 8-fight win streak. We haven't seen either one of these guys this year. Marab hasn't fought in almost a year. Aldo fought last December when he beat Cheeto. I'm gonna take Marab here. I just think that Aldo's great. All-time great, and we don't see guys drop down in weight when they get older. They usually go up in weight, and Aldo's went down here instead of fighting at 145, fighting at 135. But I'm still taking Marab. I just think the wrestling will get it done. I think his striking is not underappreciated, but just undervalued. He's a pretty decent striker, but obviously a heck of a wrestler. That gym also has he fights in the same gym as not TJ, but Sterling and a couple of those other guys. So I'm that gym. When you're hot at a gym, you're hot at a gym, and when you're fighting along with the champion and training along with the champion, lock it in. I'm on the island of Marab, baby.
Yeah, I will say one of the biggest reasons why I'm on the Aldo train is simply I just feel like if there really is sports gods, if that's a real thing, and I talk to them a lot, so there better be, the fighter gods have to be thinking the same thing that we are as fans, the same thing. Every single fighter in the UFC, besides Marab, wants Aldo to fight for the title in his next fight. Every single one of them. And I just feel like if the fighter gods have anything left in them, then that's exactly how this fight has to go, because I'd love to see Jose fight one more time for that belt before he retires.
I mean, this is his last run, right? I mean, we can.
Has to be. Yeah.
We'll talk. I mean, whether it's we'll obviously get into it tomorrow, but
hey,
I
even
mean,
if he wins, no matter what in the post show, we're gonna say even if he wins tonight, we're gonna say in the post show this is his last run, no matter what. This is his last run at the belt.
He loses. It's much like I said last week with Dominic Cruz. I think if he loses this fight, I mean, those two legends, I would like to see those two legends match up against each other and maybe a loser leaves town type thing. Loser. And I mean, just doesn't even have to leave town, just retires, you know what I mean?
No,
but I'd like to, I'd like to see those two guys go at it. If Jose loses, and I mean, it's going to, I think this is my prediction for fight of the night. I think it's going to be a close fight, but, I mean, Craig, is this it for Jose if he loses here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if he loses this fight, this is it as far as title contention in his career at all. But I don't know if it's it. I mean, Aldo up until the weigh-ins yesterday, Aldo just seems like he still got it. He still loves the game. I mean, I kind of like what you said, if Aldo were to lose, him and Dominic Cruz setting it up. But at the same time, I don't know that I want to see Aldo. I don't know that I want to see his career end that way. I want to see Aldo go out, with a win, with the respect. Not saying that I don't think that he would beat Dominic Cruz, but I kind of think Dominic Cruz deserves the same thing. You know what I mean? I think those guys kind of deserve a respectful farewell. Maybe they could get it if they matched up against each other. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, like you said, we'll talk more about it on the post show tomorrow. But Merab said, if he wins this fight and Sterling wins, he said he don't want to fight him because that's his boy and they go to the same gym. So, I mean, it'll kind of be interesting to see, what happens moving forward here. Like you said, we'll get into a lot of it tomorrow on the post show when we see what happens tonight.
Yeah, Sterling's come out earlier and said that if Merab ever has a title shot, he would vacate the title and move up to featherweight, I guess, at 145 is what Aldo has come out and said before, to give Merab a chance at the bantamweight title. So, I mean,
so what you're really saying is that I want Merab to win tonight because I would love to see Aldo go to 145. I would the way he looked against Jan I would love to see Aldo go to 145. He looked absolutely monstrous in his last fight.
Yeah, he's come out and said that he's not going to stop Merab, and so obviously if that's it's always
that's awesome.
It's always difficult too, I think, as a gym partners and friends who train, and you're in the same weight class, and we're talking two of the elite guys in that division. I mean, for Aldo, if he wins, man, they've said they're going to go to Brazil in January. Obviously, you circling Aldo versus winner of maybe Sterling and TJ. They fight in October. That timeline would match up depending on how healthy they were. You would put that title for Aldo in Brazil in January.
You got to think with that Brazil card being in January, win or lose, Aldo's probably on that card in most likely one of his last fights. You got to think that if you're ever looking for a way to ride off into the sunset with a win at home, whether it's for a belt or not, Aldo's got to look at that and kind of think that might be the one.
Yeah, I mean, Craig, and you said that Cruz and Aldo, I mean, they need. I like that fight as both guys, just two older guys. I hate when they feed the old guy to the younger guys. We're going to see in next month's card. I'd like to see the two veterans clash, and we as fans deserve that fight. I mean, these guys go back, two legends in the game. Obviously Aldo always fought at featherweight, and now at bantamweight, but so we never got to see them clash. And that would be a heck of a fight, Aldo versus Cruz. But, I mean, time will tell. I think that would be a great fight for both of them. It's kind of the almost time to get out of town retirement fight.
Yeah, a couple WEC legends even.
Right. And like you alluded to, man, as long as Aldo don't, suffer any injuries or anything like that, win or lose, I mean, you got to try to get him on that Brazil card,
No doubt. All right, boys, let's get into the co-main event here in the men's middleweight. Kenny's favorite fighter, Pablo Costa, 13-2, was 13-0, but dropped his last two. He's number 6, and he's taken on Pablo's a pretty heavy favorite at -400, taking on former middleweight champ, guy who hasn't fought, though, in over 3 years, Luke Rockhold. Last time we saw Luke Rockhold, he was fighting at light heavyweight. Is now back at middleweight. And he, like I said, he hasn't fought since 2019. He hasn't had a win since 2017. Last time he fought at middleweight was 2018. Kenny, you were unmarried and did have 0 kids the last time Luke Rockhold had a win. Now you're married and 2 babies. So, life's changed for you and Luke here. Does Luke rewind the clock, or is your favorite fighter Pablo Costa taking this one?
Call him my favorite fighter again, I will remove myself from the stream. I cannot take it. Listen, Father Time is undefeated. I loved Luke Rockhold when he came over from Strikeforce. I was a big Luke Rockhold guy. I loved Luke Rockhold when he beat Weidman and got the belt. But Luke Rockhold's a long, long time ago. And to be honest, after going back and watching some fights, you watch fights to prepare for these cards. We don't want to come here and sound like dummies. So you go back and watch Luke Rockhold fight. At the end of the day, what we really learned about Chris Weidman is he caught Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva broke his leg, and that was who Chris Weidman was. And Luke Rockhold kind of showed everybody that. And then everyone else in the UFC kind of showed us what Luke Rockhold was too. And I know he's been training his butt off. If you watch the videos, he's in obviously very good shape. He's done well these last couple of years to get back into it. But man, if you're a striker and that's about all you can do, you got to be worried whenever your chin becomes suspect. And his last couple of fights we've seen, his chin is very suspect. It is not just made of glass. That glass is cracked. Now, one of those fights was against Jan Blachowicz. And I think about everybody in the world gets knocked out by Jan Blachowicz. And so I think when you look at that, maybe you can give him the benefit of the doubt some. But we've seen Paulo Costa be great. Up until he fought Izzy and then kind of the whole train fell off the tracks, Paulo Costa was great. And when you see kind of where his career's at and he knows he needs a win, he's looking up and seeing an old man Rockhold that, no offense to him, probably doesn't belong in the cage with him at this point. He looks at that and thinks that he can rewind the clock very easily to a couple years ago and be who Paulo Costa is. Now, they've talked a little bit of shit too, which maybe can fuel that fire just a little bit more. I think Paulo Costa buckles when he's intimidated. I don't think there's anything intimidating about Luke Rockhold as far as Paulo Costa is concerned. So I will take Paulo. How much does the bottle Costa? By decision.
Craig, Pablo, this is Paulo Costa's last fight on his contract. I feel like this is kind of a must-win for him to show that, hey, I can be a businessman, because the last time we seen him, he's real unprofessional, missed the weight, didn't even really try to make the weight when he fought Vettori, and then they ended up fighting at light heavyweight, and then it looked like the UFC was going to tell him, hey, man, you're going to have to fight at light heavyweight, but I guess they gave him the opportunity here to kind of prove himself. How important is this fight for Pablo Costa? And, Luke Rockhold said that if he wins this fight, he wants a title shot. So which person's more delirious here, Luke Rockhold or Pablo Costa? Because they're both kind of crazy.
So, they're both kind of crazy. If we're going to say who's more delirious, Luke Rockhold, you're fucking crazy to me. If you think we're going to get a title shot. Like Kenny alluded to, Luke Rockhold, we've seen him. We've seen him hold a belt. We've seen him be good in the UFC. Personally, I've never been a Luke Rockhold fan. Personally, I don't know how this is a co-main. Luke Rockhold, we haven't seen, like you said, we haven't seen him in a fight in 3 years. We haven't seen him win a fight in 5 years. And Paulo Costa's coming off 2 straight losses. So, why is this a pay-per-view co-main to begin with? In my opinion, that, I guess, is another topic to talk about. But kind of like Kenny alluded to, so Luke Rockhold, like when we were talking in the last fight, Kenny said there's always this nostalgia thing that Dana's bringing in. Like, to me, that's this fight. This is the nostalgia. We're bringing in Luke Rockhold, this older guy. Oh, we can talk about how he's in great shape. We can talk about, how much time he spent in the gym and this and that. But one thing that you don't get back, no matter how much you train and you exercise and whatever you do, is the chin. And the last 2 times that we've seen him, he's been knocked out. Now, granted, he was getting knocked out at light heavyweight, so he's fallen falling back a weight class, but Paulo Costa's no slouch. Paulo Costa, if there's one thing he's got some power. And I don't know exactly what happened there with that Izzy fight, but it was almost like there was like a mental downward spiral there with Costa for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, just hitting the bottle, you know, like we say, I call him Fat Drunk Costa now because he missed hitting the bottle of wine. But like you alluded to, this is the last fight he's got on his contract, so this is a huge fight for him. Coming off 2 straight losses, basically showing that you don't belong in the top 5. I almost feel like Luke Rockhold's a cookie here. For Costa to get a win before he's got to get into these negotiations. And if he can't pull this one out, maybe Costa's in the PFL next time we see him fight, you know what I mean? So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I think it's a big time fight for Paulo Costa, for where he's at in his career. I think he looks more confident than he's looked in the last 2 fights here at the weigh-ins and stuff. And like I said, Luke Rockhold, I mean, if there's just one thing you might have your speed back, you might have your power back. I just don't think you got your chin back. That thing doesn't ever come back. And the last 2 times we've seen him fight, he's been knocked out. I'm taking Costa to knock him out tonight as well. I'm actually, God, man, it hurts my stomach to say this. It almost makes me want to throw up, but Paulo Costa is my lock of the week.
I'm kind of with you boys. I mean, the wino Pablo Costa, I had a tough time. It's in my DNA not to pick him because I think he's just, I just don't want to pick him. But and if it was anybody but old man Luke Rockhold here, I'd almost take the other person just to spite. But I'm kind of with you guys. Pablo's going to put the pressure on. I think we're going to see that old, 13-0 Pablo Costa that we haven't seen in his last 2 fights. Just a guy that can put pressure on you and can knock, put your lights out. And once we know that like you guys have alluded to, once you know the chin's kind of gone there, it's gone. And I think, it's going to get real uncomfortable, I think, for Luke Rockhold. Remember when we saw it against the guy that just fought in London that got Gustafsson, and how uncomfortable that was and over real quick. I almost have a feeling it could go that bad for Luke Rockhold here. And then where everybody's saying, hey, man, Luke, it's time, man. We appreciate everything that you've done. But lock it in, boys. We're all in. Unfortunately, we're all not going to be drinking wine, but we're all going to be cheering for the wino tonight. Pablo Costa. We're all in on the Pablo train.
No one said anything about cheering for the wino. Okay, I'm not cheering for the wino. I picked him because I'm trying to get that belt back. I will not be cheering for Paulo Costa.
Well, if he loses, I guess we're not gonna, nobody's gonna complain, right? I mean, so it's worth it.
Yeah, a loss doesn't hurt anybody on the chasing the belt. So,
hey, I just want to preface too. Like, I know it's that like we talk a lot of shit about Paulo Costa. And to like Chris Landis, who might be watching. But realistically, like at the end of the day, man, when you disrespect the game the way he has, you cannot be my favorite fighter. I can't like you anymore. I loved Paulo Costa after he fought Yoel Romero. I was one of the people that thought Paulo Costa had a chance to go beat Izzy because he was going to push the pressure on him. Missing weight, being drunk, you're fighting as a light heavyweight. As a fighter, I can't have any respect for that dude. Like, it's not personal attacks. It's just as a fighter, Paulo Costa is just not the guy. So anybody that ever bitches saying we just personally attacking Paulo Costa, they were personally attacking Paulo Costa, the fighter, not the person.
I mean, he's
earned all the criticism that he gets on this show.
Yeah, I mean, Pablo in general has got some issues, I think, but we do have some comments coming in here before we get into the main event. Bingus Bogus has pretty much just said that the Pablo's a trash fight. He's not a fan of it, pretty much. And then he said that was pretty much the only comment. That's worth a ding. He's just so yeah. Bingus Bongus, thanks for tuning in, and we're all kind of agreement here that we're not all big Pablo Costa fans, and he's deserved that criticism. I mean, he's beat a couple guys like Kenny said, Yoel Romero, and a couple others, but. Ever since I feel like sometimes when you lose a fight like he lost to Izzy and that rivalry was supposed to be built up, and the way he lost, it has spent him, like Craig said, just a downward spiral, and he hasn't been the same. And hopefully this is that get right fight, because I'd like to see him get back and, be able to be a contender again.
I mean, if you can't beat Luke Rockhold, then you don't get back in, right? I mean, it's this kind of now or never chance for Costa here. I mean, like I said, I feel like this is kind of the cookie to him. Like, if you can't win this fight, bro, you don't belong.
Oh, I forgot to mention the last fight. Merab in the Merab fight. Merab's my lock of the card here, boys. So let's get to it, boys. The main event here. After we're all on Pablo Costa, the main event: Camaro Usman, undefeated in the UFC. The last time he fought this man in 2015, this man hasn't lost to another fighter since. And that is Leon Rocky Edwards, who's on a 10-fight winning streak. Craig, as the champion, is it and still or is it and new? Obviously, Usman is the pretty decent favorite here.
Yeah, man. I mean, you can't argue the fact that Usman's the favorite. I was actually on this show just a few weeks ago debating Usman and Volkanovski as the pound for pound GOAT, and I was on the Usman bandwagon. I mean, I still think that Usman's been out here finishing fights, and he's just, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, as a guy that's been holding the belt, it's like every time you see him, he's looking better. He's looking like he's still evolving his game, and things are still changing. And Camaro Usman, I mean, he's one of those guys until you see somebody beat him, he just damn near looks unbeatable out there. Now Rocky, man, Rocky's been on a tear, and he's had to endure the grind, and he's had to do the work. He's had a lot of fights to get through to climb this ladder to get to the top, and it just always kind of seemed like 8 wins in a row, not enough. 9 wins in a row, like Rocky. There's always somebody else that they were feeding him. Rocky was just never there for the title shot, not really in the talks. So, I love the grind, and I love the way that he's been going through it. And I mean, he was set up to fight Chimaev, I believe. And it just seems like Edwards will take whatever fight he needs to take to work his way back up to get a title shot. And I love that mentality. But Usman, man, Usman's just so tough. Like I said, I was arguing him as the pound for pound GOAT out there. And if you look back at that Leon fight, I mean, you guys know I'm a big Diaz fan. Edwards looked great in that fight. He was piecing Nate up the whole entire time. But if Nate ain't Nate and pointing and laughing when he's got Rocky shook there in the 5th, I mean, Edwards might not even be in this fight. You know what I mean? If Nate went in for the kill there in the 5th round. So, I mean, all that being said, boys, like Usman, he's a G. Looking at this card, though, I had to pick a dog somewhere, and every damn dog on this card was shitty. So I'm putting the belt on the line. I'm going ballsy. I'm taking Leon Rocky Edwards to get the strap tonight as my dog of the week. I mean, boys, I really do like Usman in this fight. I had to take a dog somewhere on this card. If I got to take a dog, I'm riding with Leon.
Kitty, I mean, Rocky here, this fight is a fight I feel like we've been talking about for like 3 years now. I mean, Leon was supposed to fight Tyrone Woodley in a #1 contender fight, but then the pandemic hit. So then they put Burns in. Burns wins. He's supposed to fight Usman. Then Burns gets COVID. And then that's when they plug in Masvidal. I mean, Rocky has continued to sit on the sidelines, had to fight guys like Bilal Muhammad. Did fight, Craig alluded to the Nate Diaz fight. But we haven't seen Rocky now in a year. Last time we saw Usman was when he defended the belt against Covington, for the second time. I mean, this fight is a fight that they just been, mixing and matching everybody else, and Rocky's been having to sit on the sideline. Is it Rocky's time? Or are you going with and still here?
Well, it's not Rocky's time. I'm definitely going and still. When you watch their first fight, I rewatched it a couple times this week. Leon did a really good job of stopping takedowns in the early first round, first part of second round. But once Usman started landing a couple shots and he was able to change levels, he was not able to stop them takedowns at all. He was able to get back up every time. But Usman took him down pretty much with ease whenever he wanted, really, after that first round. And I think that when you look at that, one thing that he did a bunch, he would fake the shot, and then he would come back up and throw that hook. And he's pretty much mastered that now. You can ask Jorge Masvidal. The fake shot with the big right hook is kind of Usman's move. And I think that Leon opens himself up to that a lot. He opened himself up to that a lot in the first fight. And if he does it again in the second fight, it's going to be over pretty quick. I do not want to disrespect Leon. Leon's a very long, rangy striker. He's got good takedown defense, and he's got good stand-up game. I just think that when you watch that first fight with Usman, and then when you watch that first fight with Usman, and then you go back and you watch his fight with Nate, Leon's kind of the same guy. He hasn't really evolved very much as a fighter. He's the same exact dude that he was. When you watch Usman's first fight with Leon, and then you watch all of his fights with Kobe, and you watch his ascent and his climb to the belt, Usman's a completely different guy now. He's got the same wrestling that he always had, but now he's got stand-up to go with it. He's got a lot of power in those hands, and I just think that he's going to overwhelm Leon. I don't think that Leon has evolved enough, and I think Usman's going to win by TKO in round 3. That's my lock of the card.
So Craig's on the Rocky train. Kenny's on the Usman train. So this is how I see it, man. There's just something to me when a fighter is just continuing to get disrespected. I mean, Usman has not even paid attention to Rocky, I don't feel like at all. He's talking about moving to 205, not even fighting 185. Hey, I'm going to jump 2 weight classes. He's talking about fighting Canelo. He's talking about fighting everybody else besides Rocky. And I think that has just been straight disrespect towards Rocky. And I think he's overlooking him. And I'm kind of on the train of Rocky as far as I think Usman is getting a little bit too big for his head. Too, Hollywood, as they say, not wearing the shirts, trying to be flashy. This is a different mentality of Usman we haven't really seen. He's getting too big, and I almost like a Conor McGregor type as far as like waking up in the satin sheets. It's hard to wake up and go to work when you're waking up in satin sheets every day, as Marvelous Haggard once said, or something on the lines of that. So, boys, I'm all in on Rocky Edwards and new as my dog of the week, baby. So just to recap here for everybody watching, we make the picks. You get 1 point for making your pick right. Then you get 2 points for a dog and 2 points for the lock. So I'm gonna run down my picks real quick, and then I'll give you guys make your picks real quick again. So I got Tyson Pedro. I'm on the Lucy Island myself. I'm on the Marab as my lock of the card. I'm on Pablo, and I'm on Rocky as my dog of the week. Kenny, go ahead and give you a quick rundown of the picks for anybody who missed it. Yep, you're still muted there.
Act like a professional, boys. I got Pedro in the first fight. I got Wu in the second fight. I got Aldo, my dog of the week, in the third fight. I got Paulo Costa by decision in fourth fight. And I got Usman, lock of the week, in main event.
All right, Craig, that's the champ, man.
All right, I've got Pedro in the opener. I've got Wu winning the second fight. I've got Aldo over Marab. I've got Costa as my lock of the week, and I'm taking Leon Rocky Edwards as my dog of the week. And another point, kind of like you alluded to in that fight, man, like Rocky's he's been having to endure the grind and be disrespected while Usman is, like you said, and like he has said, Mr. Shirtless Hollywood, planning all these things. This fight has got a sneaky little bit of Juliana Pena, Amanda Nunes to me, where Amanda Nunes is the better fighter. She was the better fighter in fight one, but Juliana Pena had been licking her chops looking for that fight for 4 or 5 years. And I feel like Rocky Edwards is kind of in that boat where he's been licking his chops. Just give me who you got to give me so I can get to Usman. Give me who you got to give me. I'll go through everybody I need to get to. I'll climb the ladder. Give me to Usman. And kind of like Bodkin said, Usman's just standing up there looking at all these other big fish in the sea, and he don't see Rocky Edwards coming up right up to the ship. So I mean, I think there's a sneaky upset feel here. If there was a better dog, I didn't want to take Aldo as my dog because I felt like that fight was a pretty close. If there was a better dog for me to take in my picks, I probably would be going with Usman, because at the end of the day, I do think Usman is the better fighter. But this fight has got a little bit of sneaky upset on it, because I really do think that Leon's kind of got that Juliana Pena feel with the Amanda Nunes fight kind of going on here.
I'm with you. I'm on the same train. I had that same feeling, and that was great point, Craig. I have that Juliana Pena Nunes feel to it, where she's just Rocky's been so focused on Usman for the last 3 years that now he finally has his opportunity. And now, I mean, Kenny could be right, and he could get his lights put out quick. But I just think that it's going to be the upset, I think, here. So, boys, you guys got any last final thoughts here on this card before we wrap up? Kenny, you got any last final thoughts?
No, I'll appreciate getting that bill back tomorrow.
Craig?
Not really, man. My only thoughts on this card is that, the matchmakers could do better. Even with the fights that we have here, like I said earlier, man, the Romanov-Tybura final prelim fight should be on the pay-per-view card before the Wu and Pudilova fight, in my personal opinion. And I think, when you're going to schedule these things, I think the Aldo fight should be the co-main. I still think Paulo Costa coming off of 2 straight losses and Luke Rockhold not winning a fight in 5 years, making that a pay-per-view co-main event. I think there's better things that could be had. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to watch the fight, so I'm going to be on the post show tomorrow, hopefully hanging on to this belt. So we'll see.
So before we leave here, we got another comment from Bingus Bogus here. He said Usman's hard to put out. Yeah, Usman is hard to put out. I think if Rocky wins, it's going to be by decision.
Rocky's hard to put out too.
Just as most of his his wins are, I think it's going to be decision. I think he's going to point him. I think because of his long reach, he can keep Usman hopefully at bay. And I think he'll point him. And I've read and heard that it's like plus 1,000 by Rocky by decision. So if you're looking for a tasty treat on the old gambling side, put a little bit of Rocky plus 1,000 there for decision. So we will have our ESPN Pick'em. I'm going to put that out on our socials. I'm going to make the group right now as soon as we get done. We'll make our picks, have all our picks in there. Play along. If you beat us in the ESPN Pick'em, we'll give you a shout out on tomorrow's show. We'll be back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. Central Time Zone for our Headkicks and Haymakers post show, wrapping everything up, breaking down all the fights that was. I'll be back here in a few hours on Let's Talk Sports with Dan Harris and my guy Tanner on Buffoon and Bodkins as well. We'll be back tomorrow, folks. Kenny, go ahead and hit that outro, baby. We'll catch y'all later.